Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
With the name of Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, we praise him and we thank him for all the goodness that is on the rise. There's no power, no way, there's no reality that doesn't put God first. Rochester, we appreciate you coming out to the 4th Independence Day address on this holiday weekend. We promise to have you in your backyard somewhere today, continuing your barbecue. But a little housekeeping, I want you to look at all of the exit signs here. In case of emergency, you could use these doors to exit. The restrooms are right out through the back there. To the right, to the left is the women, to the right is the men. And after this event, you can view the gallery. We have a real bustling black art gallery. And Sister Dolores Radney, if she's here, she's going to give us a tour of that if you want to do that. Also, as you come in, you've had envelopes marked Muslim American Ministry. I'm asking you to please be generous and consider a donation. You can CashApp or put cash or check in the envelopes. I want to introduce to us some of our elected officials that are here with us today. I see two of them. Everyone knows I'm there, Malik and the President. President of City Council is Miguel Melendez. And the first speaker that we have coming to the podium is a public educator, and he's the curator for all of our lectures and our classes, which are held on Sundays. He documents those and catalogs them, and without his attention to detail and organization, we would be completely lost. His documentation puts us in position to historically document the continuation of the guiding tradition which we follow today, and that leads a direct path into the future and from an illustrious past. His astute insight in the message and the importance of Imam W.D. Muhammad, and now his successor, who you're going to meet in a few minutes, Imam Abdullah Muhammad. He facilitates our weekly classes on Sunday, and I want to bring to the podium Imam Abdullah from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Peace. Assalamu alaikum. I don't want to be too long. I have a few words to share. So let's get right to it. There's a lot I can say about this wonderful city, Rochester, and all that there is to see. But again, like I said, I'm gonna get right to it. So, Independence Day. We're here on this occasion in recognition of this holiday observation. Independence Day, and we see these major freedom fighters in our history. One thing about human nature is equipped in such a way that it gives us the possibilities to reach for a greater situation of independence, a greater situation of freedom, a greater situation of expansion and advancement upon and towards our excellence. But it also, with that same freedom that allows us to advance in life, that freedom can be turned in the other direction, and it can be used to oppress the life, and it can be used to create a level of bondage that suppresses the life. And this great luminary right here in the middle, Frederick Douglass, is one who was born into the unique situation of bondage that existed in this country. And, you know, a lot of people know the story. Great man. Tradition holds that Muhammad the Prophet of Islam of 14 centuries ago, in his first encounter with divine guidance, focused his attention on the processes that God used to facilitate the development, the natural development of human life. So guidance kind of meets human nature right at the end of this reach. There's so far that we can go with our appetites and urges and inclinations. And divine guidance picks up right at the end of the reach of the natural processes and extends it further upon the dignity of that natural processes. So this is the placement of guidance. The natural urges and appetites are not going to get us to civilization. But the intellect has the ability to advance us and move us in that direction. And like I said, it also has the power to take us in the other direction. So divine guidance has its place. The environment, we have the ability to set up the environment in a way that facilitates how we want life to be. This powerful human intellect that we have, this powerful quality that we have to situate us in life, it gives us the ability to create the environment. The environment automatically sends signals and influences to the mind and supports the direction of life. But we have the ability to create an artificial environment, an environment completely manufactured by human ingenuity that sends signals to the mind of people's choosing. And if those signals, if that environment is not natural, then it can impose unnecessary or oppressive limitations on the life. What's needed is people who are having the drive and the influence, the urge, the stability, the strength, the courage to stand up and create influences, to create the life, to create an environment, to create a situation around us that supports the life and moves it in the direction that supports the best and most dignified expressions of human possibility, of human life. Frederick Douglass, our ancestor, this great luminary, he was born into slavery, and with the strength that he had, the determination that he had to hold on to his best life, he fought for his freedom. He fought for his freedom, he earned his freedom, and he ended up turning back around and looking America in the eye, looking America in the face, eye to eye, and challenging it for its hypocrisy. It's recorded that he said, no, it wasn't a quote from him. But Frederick Douglass, in his 4th of July address, he challenged America for its hypocrisy. But there was another enslaved person that I'm thinking of, a woman named Julia. And she came up in the same conditions, the same environment that burdened the life of Frederick Douglass. She experienced something very similar. And the expression that she had, she said to her slave master, "You look like God in the face, but act like the devil in your heart." This is saying that the environment can alter your perception. It can influence your perception. It can shape your perception. And these people who look at their oppressors and say, "You look like God," that's an influence from the environment. Okay? So we shouldn't take for granted the circumstances and the institutions and the life around us. We need to actively be involved in shaping the life. We need to be actively involved in setting up institutions and situations that support the stability and the excellence and the dignity of the life. And one of the most important institutions in human community is leadership. And in this time that we live in right now, 2024, we can recognize that we're experiencing a crisis when it comes to having good quality leadership. We're experiencing a crisis. So it magnifies and highlights the emphasis and the need to put the spotlight on real, effective, natural, dignified, qualified leadership. And the leadership that we have, that we're pointing to, that we all came here to hear from today, is the one that comes in a long tradition that captures, that holds, that preserves, that moves in the direction of the freedom movement in the soul of not only the African American people, but of humanity at large. We have on this side the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. We know Frederick Douglass, the son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the successor in the line of this great tradition is the man who we came here to hear from today, the leader for this time, Imam Abdullah Malik Muhammad. And I'm going to close with that. Peace. That's what I'm going to do.
Next, we have the owner and developer and founder of Elamine Priority Distributors, home of Imam Abdullah. He and his wife Shabazz, they produced the original bean pie along with the Cincinnati #5 version of the bean pie. He's the co-host along with myself of Valiant Voices, which this is a shameless plug. We're on every Thursday at 8 p.m. And he has coined the term in our association, who is speaking like this. It is my pleasure to bring Imam Lorenzo Elamine from Cincinnati, Ohio to the
Thank you, Imam Hanif Abdul Wahid. We greet, as we Muslims greet, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. I am thankful to be here for this most important address from Muslim American leader Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. We are here today for the 4th annual Independence Weekend Public Address, and his topic, Sacred Aim of Neighborhood Excellence, Restoring the Lost Property of the American People. I know for myself and my wife, we had to be here for this historic event. We traveled here from Cincinnati, Ohio to be here with you all, and we say to the organizers of this event, we congratulate you in this success and what you have provided here for not just the public of Rochester, but for any human being that wants to elevate their life. I think that we are in the right place. I have been here in the city of Rochester for each one of these events, and I have never been to Rochester, this beautiful city that's most associated with the Honorable Frederick Douglass. I say to the organizers and to those of us that are here, this is excellence being realized. I can't think of anywhere else I would want to be on this day other than here for this historic occasion to hear from the one that Imam W.D. Muhammad put his hand on. So I say to you, you are in the right place for today. Praise be to Allah. And I'm going to conclude with that because I want to hear as you want to hear from Muslim American leader Imam Malik Muhammad. I'm anxious as you are, and I say peace be upon you and God bless us.
We're moving right along. Next, we have a sister who is a shining example of education, acumen, intelligence, poise, and intellectual curiosity. She's been raised by parents who value education and would inspire them to facilitate and operate Claire Muhammad School up under Imam W.D. Muhammad in Boston, Massachusetts. Sister Farad follows those footsteps and passionately pursues education with the desire to build systemic Islamic education as an institutional model for excellence. She is the co-host of the weekly podcast, which is fastly gaining subscribers. The Frank and Farad Show. It is called Family Ties. She is a second-generation Muslim raised in the tradition of Imam W.D. Muhammad, and I welcome to the podium Farad Brown.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. I too, this is actually my first time in the city of Rochester. So I'm delighted to be here with you all this weekend. I look forward to touring some of the famous sites that are associated with the leadership that has come out of this amazing city. I open with the name of God, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. And the topic that our leader will be speaking on today is on neighborhood excellence as a sacred property of the American people. And so I'd just like to take a short moment to share with you a scriptural understanding of what neighbor or neighborhood means. And in the Quran, the word that is used for neighbor, the Arabic is jari. And that word has a root meaning that it means hollow. So for those of you who love nature, who are students of science, you'll understand if you visualize with me a nature walk, go through the woods, you'll see trees. And you'll see at the base of the trees, sometimes you'll see a hollow. It's home to animals. It's home, the hollows that are higher up in the tree are homes to birds. It's where they come to nest, to lay their eggs, to find sustenance. And so when we look at this example in the natural world that the Creator has given to us, as human beings to look at and to establish our life pattern on, we find that a neighborhood, the word neighbor comes from that same root, and it means to provide for those who are close to you, a source of safeguarding, a source of protection for our children, for our babies, for one another. There's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, prayers and peace be upon him. He said that the angel Gabriel came to him, and he told him, he invoked upon him the message to take care of your neighbor to the extent that he thought that his neighbor was going to have to inherit from him. And so if you understand that concept, for someone to be so close to you that they inherit from you means that they have rights over you. They're entitled to what you have. We're also told by the Prophet, prayers and peace be upon him, that if you have food, add water to that food and make sure that you share it with your neighbor. So what does this mean? This means that in protecting and safeguarding the ones that are close to us, we have the ability to empower ourselves to change our neighborhoods, to change the lives around us. Today we're living in a day and age where we feel very much disempowered. People are they're agonizing over the election in November. Who are we going to choose? Will it be Biden? Will it be Trump? What is the result going to be? But I find that this is a disempowering narrative. It's what I tell my young children, my teenagers, and my young adult daughter. I tell them, your power has come from the Creator of all the worlds. And that power can't be taken from you by whatever government is in power at the moment. That power begins with those closest to you. And this is the instruction that is given to us not just in the Quran, but it's given to us in the Gospel, it's given to us in the Old Testament, loving your neighbor as yourself. This is a serious call to action on the part of the Creator of all the worlds, Oftentimes we look around us and we say, the economy, I can't fix that. I don't have a degree in economy. I'm not necessarily a businessman. I can't go out today and change the state of the schools. But you know what you can do? What you can do is look next door and see what's happening to the children next to you. You can look and see what's happening to the elders that live on your street. This is in your power to affect change. And the human being has been put on this earth in order to affect change. And so the instruction that we're given by the creator of all the worlds is to look at what is in your power to change. In that lies the blueprint for success. In that lies the blueprint for empowerment. In that lies the ability to tell our young people. I see some of you here in the audience. It tells our children, you have the ability right now to go out, to mow your neighbor's lawn, to ask after, inquire after the welfare of your elders. You have the power to do that. And as you grow in your ability to affect change with your neighbors, you will grow in your ability, your confidence, your capacity to make change on a greater and greater level. So I would like to close out as our brother Imam Lorenzo did, because I am eager to hear the message of the successor to Imam Muhammad, the Muslim American spokesman for human salvation. And what I would like to close with is a reminder that we have Frederick Douglass's image in front of us. He was one in a long trajectory of leaders, a tradition of leaders, and it's a baton, it's a race. That baton has been passed on to us. But I'd like to remind us that you don't necessarily need to be a world spokesman in order to affect the change that we are called to do. Frederick Douglass, he took into his home formerly enslaved relatives and neighbors. He took them in not having the knowledge to read or write, not having the capacity to take care of their basic needs. He took them into his home. Harriet Tubman, as you know, she went back to her neighborhood. She went back to the eastern shore of Maryland and rescued people from her plantation and neighboring plantations. Booker T. Washington, many people, there was a famous incident, and I'll close with this. Booker T. Washington, there was a young man who was going to be lynched. There was an incident, I won't go into the details. And everyone implored Booker T. Washington to take him in at Tuskegee Institute and to protect him. Booker T. Washington says no. And so everyone is looking at him and saying, you're a sellout, you're a coward, you won't protect this young man. The man hides out. It turns out that he is safely and swiftly carried out of Tuskegee, Alabama, and he lives a long and fruitful life. Booker T. Washington never says anything about this. After his death, people are made aware of the fact that he sent money through others, and he didn't want any of it to come back to him. He didn't want anyone to know, but he cared so much about this young man's life and his welfare and his well-being that he privately and secretly secured his safe passage out of Tuskegee, Alabama. That is the care and concern of a neighbor. So I remind us that that baton of Frederick Douglass, of Harriet Tubman, of Sojourner Truth, of Booker T. Washington has been passed down for this tradition through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Imam Muhammad, and now to Imam Abdullah Muhammad. And for all of us, whether you take part in that tradition or not, the baton of our ancestors is in our hands now. We have the power to affect change, and the reparations, I would say, the true reparations is coming from within. It's our ability to affect change, one person, one neighborhood at a time. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
It's starting to heat up in here now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, praise be to Allah. Next, we want to bring to the podium, before we introduce our leader, this next speaker, it is apropos, and he is called Professor. To be in his presence is like always being in class. His historical acumen and accurate portrayal of our ancestors' determination and struggle, which define their or our progress, is told in a compelling, demonstrative picture that leaves a desire to challenge our deepest thoughts of their intended message for us. He is called professor because he lectures from their graves and sentiments the passion you must pursue in order to get the one thing that they wanted for us more than anything else, and that is our dignity. So please help me bring to the podium our professor, Professor Wally Shabazz.
Greetings, good afternoon. The name of Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. I greet you all in peace once again. Assalamu alaikum. Great dignitaries. Frederick Douglass, the most recognized and photographed face in the 19th century. Former slave, the most photographed and recognized face in the 19th century. Muhammad Ali, the most photographed and recognized face in the 20th century. He could stand on any corner in the world, and within 10 minutes there'd be a traffic jam. Yes. Muhammad Ali. The chain of dignified men and women through our experience. When the Irish Catholic in the turn of the 20th century were fighting the British for independence, they studied our history and looked at how we struggled in our existence in America. Your excellence is based on your humanity, not on the color of your skin. You have no control over this, but we have complete control over our behavior. And we have to get beyond being black in the dark and get to intellect, get to intelligence, get to rational balance in our behavior. We're losing our children all over America. I read something about there was a big incident with some teenagers here in this town the other day. What would Dr. King say? What would our great brother Frederick Douglass say? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, with the discipline of the fruit of Islam in preparation for the leadership of his son, Imam Muhammad, there was a character that we had as an ethnic group of people in America that other people outside of us studied our efforts, studied our struggle. There was something called Sabbath schools that took place in America after the Civil War. Over 90% of us were illiterate. In these Sabbath schools in churches throughout the South, by the turn of the 20th century, over 50% of us were literate. Church basements, one-room schoolhouses, sitting in the sand. There was a value in the educational, in the African American community for education, for dignity, and for excellence. That is part of our culture, not gangster rap. The dignity of our presentation as it relates to our human excellence needs to be reinvigorated in our neighborhoods. Our leadership needs a new face. We need to explain to the people our true history and, more importantly, our destiny. Where are we headed? Unless we stand up, brothers and sisters, and carry the banner of human excellence that these great patriarchs represented, we're going to go the way of the dinosaur. And I'm not speaking about numerically, I'm speaking about intellectually.
Yes, sir.
Now, we had a brother that's going to come before us that is not like a thunderstorm that creates those great sounds that you hear in Niagara Falls, and the rumbling and the rush of the water. It's like a mist, fine mist of knowledge that's falling, and you have to be patient to receive the nutrients in the fine mist that is coming down to us. Assalamu alaikum.
Before we bring our leader up, and I'm not going out of order here, I just failed to do this in the beginning. We want to hear some remarks from our mayor, Imam Malik Evans. And yeah, I called you Imam. There's a reason.
Praise be.
Yes. And I want to say, since this young man was in middle school, what was taught at his dinner table is to make this city a city for one people. We want to have a city for those connected and privileged, and one for those that are disconnected. And he's working very, very hard. And as citizens of Rochester, I think it's our duty to assist and help him.
Yes, sir.
And one of my obligations and duty as an elder in this city is to make sure that he has all the tools possible that would assist and help him to make Rochester a great city. And I tell you, you do us proud, and your ancestor, Frederick Douglass, he is smiling down on you today. So could you please come to the podium?
Thank you, and I know that I will be brief because I know we want to get to the speaker. I just want to welcome everyone here that is from out of town to the city of Rochester. I hope that you have been treated well. And I'll just tell you, I'm blessed because I grew up down the street from a house that Frederick Douglass had in this city on the corner of Bond and Hamilton Street. So I grew up at my dinner table, learning, knowing about Frederick Douglass. And one of the things my father would always say, now, I'm the son of a Baptist preacher, but I'm named after Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, so I understood history. And one of the things my father would always say, he would use a quote from Malcolm X that said, "Of all of our greatest rewards, history is our greatest teacher." And I want to thank Brother Hanif and Imam Muhammad for being here to remind us of our history.
Yes.
Because when we know where we're going, there is nothing that can stop us. And that is why events and gatherings like this are so important in our city, because our people should perish for a lack of knowledge.
Yes.
And someone mentioned the events what happened with our young people, and ironically that event happened in MLK Park. It happened in MLK Park. How embarrassing is that for us? But that is on all of us as a community, because those are our children. They may not be my biological children, but they are all of the community's children. We have an obligation to make sure that they do right, that they act right, and that they are instilled with that knowledge. Now, I'm a praying person, and I pray all the time, and I'll end with this. Frederick Douglass said, "I prayed for 20 years and got no answers. And then I prayed with my legs." And that reminds me of faith without work is dead.
Yes, sir.
So we have to have our faith. We have to make sure that we pay, because I believe if you don't have faith, that's dangerous. but we also have to work with our legs. And in working with our legs, that means ensuring that we bring strength and community in our neighborhoods. We get strength in our neighborhoods. That will give us our community. We can't have a strong community without strength and connection and collection of all of us working together in our neighborhood. So I want to thank the Imam for coming to this great city, the great city of Rochester, and we look forward to your address. And thank you, Imam Hanif, for having me here today. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to start with a direct quote. It says, "I have to acknowledge the man who has done more than any other person to get the correct picture of Muslims and Imam W.D. Muhammad to the public of America." That person is Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad, and I thank God for him. That's a direct quote from our late leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad. Believers, this is the 4th annual Independence Day address by Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. Inspired by the same sentiments and recognition and opportunity that our ancestor Frederick Douglass used to get a universal message of freedom and justice and equality into the hearts and minds of moral people. Douglass used the same format that we have today, public address. I would say Rochester has become again the place for this renewed spirit, inspired by divine providence. The same spirit that accompanied Frederick Douglass and the many who formed the line, like the prophetic line mentioned in the scripture, "It is here again for us." And I would think after you hear this message today, you must acknowledge this and share it. So many people came before us who inspired us, men and women whose message of truth, freedom, justice, and equality made us stand up in our dignity and look for a way out and a way up, ascending to excellence. They too used public address as an instrument to forge an ideal and strategy to stand. We took our eyes and listening away from that leadership, and we left the responsibility for leadership to the dominant forces in the society to look out for our interests. And something diabolical happened. We became dependent on a society that hadn't built its moral infrastructure on justice. It hadn't built its infrastructure on fairness and equity. And somehow, because of lack of that, we were duped away from the tradition of leadership that forged us through trial and struggle, and which would lead us from the intelligence, and we declined based upon that. We turned against divine providence and made a covenant for trinkets, opulence, and false acceptance. This turned us away from the pursuit of dignity, a once honorable goal in our moral tradition. How do we turn around and find ourselves again? Well, with a growing base of national support, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad has reintroduced a unique tradition of leadership, messaging, and public engagement that has distinguished the spirit of Muslim African-American leadership for nearly 100 years now. This tradition was taught to him by his leader, using science of reasoning, moral logic, and scriptures to rescue the minds and hearts, which is our property, from the dominance of dependency on others. Rochester, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce to you Rochester for the 4th time, my leader, friend, and the continuation of the first American Islamic tradition and successor to Imam W.D. Muhammad, Imam Earl Abdul Malik Muhammad. Takbir.
Praise be to Allah, that is God Almighty. Grateful to Him for our presence in this great city of Rochester. I told my assistant, he's not here today, but I told him when we travel here, we can't come to Buffalo. We can't fly into Buffalo. We have to fly into the Frederick Douglass Airport. Very serious and very important.
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't feel at my best if I didn't walk through that airport. Even though coming from Washington, D.C., they made me board a flight at 10:30 p.m. So the direct flight from Washington, the capital of this country, to the city that provided the necessary spiritual support for Frederick Douglass to address the condition of man. The airlines forced us to go to sleep on it. That's time for sleep, 10:30 p.m. Well, I'm not asleep on it. I refuse to sleep on the responsibility. So we are thankful today to God Almighty for this opportunity to address you, and we are honored to have the mayor of the city of Rochester to be present with us today, and also the president of the city council. He is here too, and I met both of them. So I want to say to them directly, thank you very much for your presence. We are honored. I want to also, before I begin, I want to acknowledge the men who have for the last few years, 4 years, more than that really, organized themselves to support this continuation of leadership. And were adamant that Rochester was a suitable environment, suitable city for us to speak our important message into the ears of the citizens of the United States of America. And they did that in part out of recognition for our tradition of leadership, Muslim American leadership, but also in recognition of the influence and sacred importance of the voice of Frederick Douglass. And that is our brother Hashim Smith. He's here with me. He's a star on our security. And brother Omar Cooper, yeah, he's there. I see him. Brother Muhammad Ali, I see him. Yes, there he is. All right, right in the place, right in the right places. And Imam Hanif Abdul Wahid, who we heard from. I pray God's favor and blessing and His strength, that He give them His strength to continue in this great cause. America is in focus. America is a chosen place, a chosen environment. God chose it. God chose his people. It is in the estimation of every nation, every modern nation. America is in its estimation. Some years ago, I traveled to the country of Malaysia with Imam Muhammad, and we saw, and he commented on the fact that the flag of Malaysia is very similar to the flag of the United States of America. Same colors and same themes working in the symbolism of that flag. You might not know this, but the leader that is most well known in the character of the people of Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh. And you might have some negative opinion of him, I don't know. But in his writings, he acknowledged that he was a student, and a very serious student, of the language of the Declaration of Independence. The idea that human life is created for purpose and should be acknowledged and valued, esteemed for that purpose, was established in the founding of these United States of America. Now, we might be a long distance from that original focus, but it wasn't that Frederick Douglass was calling down God's punishment on America by calling out its hypocrisy. Even Elijah Muhammad, who had some thunderous, biting commentary on the hypocrisy of America. Even he was not calling down punishment on the American people. He was asked once about revolution and the spirit of revolution and violence, etc., arming of the people. And he said, among other things, that what would be our success if this nation or this country were destroyed. So it's a true statement that I come in the tradition of Elijah Muhammad and his son, Wallace D. Muhammad, or Wallace D. Muhammad. I stand before you in that tradition, a tradition of peace and excellence, and a tradition that wants to invite the American people to embrace its original idea in its original purity. The mayor of Rochester and the president of the city council, they have in their interest, I'm sure, the condition of the city, the condition of its people, the social condition, the moral condition, the spiritual condition, the material condition. All that contributes to the strengthening of Rochester as a community. What is a city other than a community. It's just a elevation or progression in the concept of community. It brings together institutions that have as their interest, or at least should have as their interest, the support of citizens, and to provide opportunity for those citizens. To what? To serve the common good, to serve the best life for all of the citizens. The banks or financial economic institutions have as their objective, at least publicly, to serve the best life of the citizens, to give support to the business interests so that the city can live, provide resources, material resources, and support to business interests. Banking, financing is not our enemy. It's our friend with the right focus. And it is a necessity. And it is the responsibility of government leaders to secure those relationships. Same as teachers in the schools, workers who collect the garbage weekly, or the athletes that inspire us and make us feel good about our town when we see them compete in the Olympics. They're representatives of our nation, but if they're from Rochester, they're representatives of Rochester. They're representatives of the spirit of Rochester. So this is a common American town or city that has as its founding intellect a man who wanted to challenge America to be its best, in its best picture. Why else would the citizens agree to name the airport after him? There's no political movement. No. An interest to see America be in its best condition, in its best picture. The sacred aim of neighborhood excellence, restoring the lost property of the American people. I can't speak to what the names of the neighborhoods are in Rochester, but I know they have names and character. Character of certain neighborhoods by its architecture or other institutions that define that neighborhood. And pride is taken, those who are natives of Rochester. Pride is taken in their neighborhood, what it looks like, and what institutions are associated with it, what it feels like, what it smells like. So you're talking about what it smells like. You can go into a neighborhood and know right away who's living there by the scents that come from the neighborhood. You know Mexican food. Americans, we have the benefit of having all of these diverse influences in our world. We know Italian food. To a lesser extent, perhaps, we know Jewish food. We know African American food. We know the spirit and sounds that are associated with these various neighborhoods. And to make or to provide for the most beautiful picture, we want to see all of them in good condition and functioning. I'm not a student of, or I should say, I'm not comfortable borrowing necessarily from the language of the culture to describe realities. Sometimes the language of the culture weakens our important interests. It's popular, but it's decadent, and it's not helpful. So I should say I'm a student of it, but I don't take from it. It's like I don't drink from all the water, public water fountains, and tap. I don't know if it's clean or not. I don't know if the city has taken the interest in keeping it clean. We know that from Flint, Michigan, right?
Yes, sir.
That's a lesson for us, but it's not just a material lesson, it's a spiritual lesson.
Yes, sir.
You think God didn't create water so that we can benefit from it? A cleaning agent, it's supposed to be tasty, it's supposed to serve our life, feed our life, and the water in the public of Flint, Michigan in those years was poisoning the life. So it's a stream, a cultural stream that proved to be decadent and poisonous. So we can't take from it. It looks like water, but it's not. It's taken on another character. Poison the children. Even as the officials were aware of it. So their minds and their spirit of service to the life of the citizens had been poisoned. Frederick Douglass was taking all of these things into consideration as he was calling out America to live up to its original purity, or the purity of its original ideas. He wasn't that far away from the founders in terms of years. He was addressing them, and he was addressing their heirs. He was living in the time of Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War. And even his own son was a soldier in the army of the Union. We're talking about a man that committed his whole existence to see America realize its purity, purpose for which God chose it and chose its people. So Frederick Douglass is in focus, calling America to its sacred and universal recognitions. Now, I know my manner can be a little off-putting if you're not used to it. I'm not of the typical tenor and pace of public speakers. But I don't make an apology for it, because what I have to say is very important. And you might have to transcribe it and read it later in a publication to appreciate it. So if you get impatient, you're not bothering me. You can leave if you feel like you should, because you become impatient with me, because I don't have the pace of the preacher. That's not who I am. That's not what I represent. America's founders saw something in human nature to be respected. And they believed that a society could be constructed upon that respect. They were helped by powerful scriptural themes and even poetic ideas going back into the ancient world, wanting to create a society that respected human purpose, an environment that supported human progress toward a recognition and the destiny of human purpose. They attributed that purpose and that value to a creator. They acknowledged that human life is designed and that in its design, in its constitution, is the science to support its development. That in its creation and all that is associated with its dignity as a creation is knowledge to construct an environment to support it, and that is God's will and that is His intent. And they were so empowered by this idea that they went around the world seeking support to establish this society, and were convinced that they were within their moral responsibility to oppose any force that wanted to oppress the idea. Meanwhile, while they're having these recognitions and writing and recording these high principles and ideas and wanting to safeguard them, they were denying them to a population. In that tension is the reason God chose America.
Yes, sir.
Because here is a focus, here is the focus on the universal recognitions of the value of human life. And here also is a denial of it. Principles formed in that denial to what? Not destroy it, but preserve it in the life of humans for all time. So God didn't choose Frederick Douglass. He didn't choose Elijah Muhammad. He didn't choose Wallace D. Muhammad. He chose the American people and the African American people to produce that mind.
Yes, sir.
For what? For the estimation of every nation on this earth.
Yes.
To be valued in the psyche of every world leader that want for his people dignity and respect before human communities and acceptance before Creator. I like Juneteenth. I think it's an important observance. It's an important recognition. And its meaning will fall flat if it's not associated with July 4th. It must be appreciated in the context of Independence Day. It tells the story that is necessary, that is the backdrop of the value of the society of the United States of America in world leadership conscience. The story of the African American people in the context of the claim of the American democracy is the sacred aim of neighborhood excellence. It is the sacred aim to value a people for their purpose after they have been denied and to restore them is the purpose of community. It is to find a human who has been turned off to their purpose and by virtue of the institutions of that community turned back on. That is the role of cities. To bring and to pool all that is in the movement of human life to determine its value and to bring those resources so that they benefit the development and the progress of human life toward its highest excellence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Isn't that arrogance for the poet who wrote the poem that's on the Statue of Liberty? Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free.
Yes, sir.
That's not arrogance. That's not American arrogance. That's coming from the sacred social spirit of human life that wants to seek what God intended when He created a human.
Mm-hmm. Sir.
Yes.
And at the conclusion of that poem it says, and we stand with the light at the golden door. What is that? The golden door. Opportunity. Possibility. And every city is a golden door.
Yes, sir.
Elijah Muhammad, he didn't want us to not have establishments. He told America, he said, well, if you can't respect us as citizens, give us some of these states. And we'll go, give us a couple of years and give us some material support, and then what? We'll go for self. Go for self for what? To establish a society. A society of what? Freedom. A society of justice. A society of equality. It's just a society for the black man? No. A society that values these things and holds them in high estimation as an example. Even if the whole population of the nation is black, it's still a model.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That was his spirit. That was his intent. His son followed him in that emphasis and found in the sacred scripture of Muslims the evidence upon which America was established in its democratic principle. God says in the Quran, the holy book of Muslims, you might say the Bible of Muslims, the book of Muslims, that He has given you all a standard picture. A standard picture. So I'm giving you a translation of a verse in the Quran, but it's also a commentary. So I'm making a commentary as I'm translating the verse. And it wouldn't mean anything to you for me to read it in Arabic, unless you understand Arabic. But in the construction of the verse itself, in the language of the Quran, which is Arabic, it establishes that God created a picture for human life. It is a common picture. It is a shared picture. It is a universal, if we can use that language, universal picture. All of its properties, all that make it up, its constitution, are evenly distributed. And within the truth or recognition of that picture, that He also made the many pictures. And He said, it says, for accent, and He made them all beautiful and excellent. He made them all beautiful and excellent. So what liar is going to come behind this and tell me that the broad nose is ugly? Or the hair that's tightly coiled on top of the head is not beautiful? What liar is going to come behind God's revelation that He has created the common picture, which is what? The universal human type. And within that, He has created the many pictures. Yes. And what? They are all beautiful. Mm-hmm. This is the Word of God. Mm-hmm. What liar is going to come behind that and make me think that the European type is ugly because I want to make the black type superior? Or that the European type is the superior, and based upon its superiority, all others are inferior. Muhammad the Prophet, as inspiration for the founders of these United States of America, said that there's no superiority of a black over a white. No superiority of a white over a black. No superiority of a foreigner over a native. That the only distinction is how you perform in your excellence according to the design and pattern upon which God made human life originally. Now you can't tell me that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and what's his first name? John Adams, James Monroe, and even George Washington with his slave-owning ass. He was a great man now, but he was a slave owner. Yes. And I've read reports that he wasn't a kind one either. So I said what I said. That they weren't acquainted with Muhammad the Prophet saying,
Yes.
human beings wanting to realize for themselves what did God intend when He created a human for society. What is that society supposed to look like? Is it supposed to be homogeneous? All the people looking the same? All the people having the same interests? All the people wearing the same clothes? All the people speaking the same language all the time? No. That's not the universal picture. It should be a society that recognizes the superiority of a common identity, and within that recognition, an accommodation for every other human picture.
Yes, sir.
That's America.
Yes, sir.
More than it is any other country on this earth. That's America.
Yes, sir.
The United States Constitution, in its preamble and in the Declaration of Independence, though it gives us language and a picture of an American, it wants to say that this is human. The argument of Thomas Jefferson against, now you might say, I didn't know Muslim leaders were going to be talking about the Thomas Jefferson. You get the lesson.
Yes, sir.
His argument, as detailed in his language to the King of England, he said these truths with regard to human recognition are self-evident. You yourself enjoy them. You, King George, you enjoy them. No different from the argument of Abraham to Pharaoh.
Yes, sir.
And Pharaoh, with his arrogance, wanted to make fun of Moses' argument and say maybe we can build a scaffolding and reach up to find this God that you're talking about, Moses.
Yes, sir.
Pharaoh told Abraham he knows of no God except himself. And Abraham responded to him, the one who created me will guide me. Meaning that in recognition of whatever I am as a creation of this Lord, there within it is the science to accommodate my progress in spite of your lie of your own value and worth. Because did you, Pharaoh, are you responsible for the sciences that support your progress? Did you create it? Did you create matter with a discipline to educate? An intrinsic discipline in matter itself. Are you the constructor and creator of matter from which the sciences are derived that support the development of your world? No. Same argument Thomas Jefferson is making to King George. Everything that you value has been provided for this human creature by a creator. And those humans are entitled to all of that science, all of that support, to establish for themselves a society so that they can grow and progress and realize their highest state. And you have no authority to deny it. So these rights, these recognitions, these observances, these entitlements are self-evident.
Yes, sir.
That all humans are created equal. And in endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Unalienable rights, meaning what? That you have no authority to separate them from them because they belong to them intrinsically.
Yes, sir.
It's inherent. It is an inherent property. So when I'm speaking of restoring the lost property of the American people, that's what I'm talking about. That inherent entitlement to recognize that God has created all of us to realize our most profound dignity. Which means what? Recognition, safety, security, provisions, opportunity, freedom to pursue these things as a tool. And the consciousness to call out weak and hypocritical leaders.
Yes, sir.
They lie. The people who want to control the office of the President of the United States in its power, in its reach, in its influence. They lie to us, the American people and the world, that those pursuing the office are fit. This man standing before you is more fit.
That's right.
Yes.
Recognition of the dignity of human creation and human purpose. That is tied to, inextricably linked to a strategy to support human life and strengthen it so that all human communities can realize what God intended when He created a human. That has to be the determination of the office, that sacred office that is built with, that has its legitimacy or its credibility upon Thomas Jefferson's argument. You making it an office to argue against the dignity of man? You argue against the dignity of man with the power of the office. And you say that you are an inheritor of the founders? You are a goddamn lie.
That's right.
We don't have a population of American achievers who are fit and able to handle the responsibility of the office without looking bewildered. We don't have an entitlement to that kind of leadership. You're going to lie to us and tell us that the person is fit and want to convince us that he's fit? It's not to make a commentary against the aging of people. I have parents that are in their 80s. I know what is the sign of decline of the human person. And that in itself is a sign from God to us to respect human life.
Yes, sir.
Persons who are declining in that way, it sensitizes others to rise to the occasion, to care for that life. But you're going to tell me that that's our vibrancy? That's our strength? No, indeed. It's a horrible lie. Wanting to burn up the productivity and the credibility and the dignity and the excellence of the American promise. And we have to guard against it. And we have to speak openly and truthfully about it. I'll shorten what I want to say to you. Wrap it up in a few minutes. There is a chapter in the Quran. And it is a discussion that got the attention of the Arabs. It got the attention of the Arabs early in Muhammad the Prophet's mission. Prophet Muhammad, the prayers and the peace be on him, and many of you in the audience, you're not familiar with Muhammad. And I want you to be. And you should be. Because many of the ideas that support this country in its vision of respect for human life were borrowed from him.
Yes, sir.
So you should know him. And you should also know that under his leadership and in his interest, there was no objective to be in some kind of bitter competition with the followers of Jesus Christ. You should know that. And I'm speaking to you as a representative in his office.
Yes, sir.
All of the Imams are representatives of the office of Muhammad the Prophet. Or at least they should be. He is the model. He invited world leadership to respect human purpose under God. This is Muhammad. He sent letters to the known leaders of the world at the time in which he lived, inviting them to respect human purpose, to respect peaceful order under the authority of a common creator. This was his invitation. So Muslims, especially in America, are not in any kind of bitter conflict or ugly competition with other peoples of faith. It is our interest to strengthen, to build, and to reestablish the bonds of trust. We have our special designation. We have our special character. We have our special practices. But in the universal picture of faith, they are the same in focus and intent as the best Christian and the best Jew and the best of all of those who believe in a God and who believe that they are accountable to that God. So in this chapter of the Quran, it got the attention of the Arabs because it called to their, what they consider to be their most respected or respectable identity, the Quraysh. This is the name of the tribe, the noble tribe. How they thought of themselves. They thought of themselves as being a high nobility. And they were the caretakers of the house at Mecca. And this verse, this chapter of the Quran, it begins, says, for the protection of the Quraysh. Li'ilahi Quraysh. This is what it says in Arabic. For the protection of the Quraysh. For the protection of what they value. And what was that? They valued their custodianship of the house. And the house is associated with their first ancestor, which they recognized, and they remembered him. They knew him. They knew Ismail, or Ishmael. They knew their ancestor Ishmael. And they knew that Abraham was his father. They had knowledge of this. And they knew, too, that this house was associated with divine interests. They didn't have the understanding and correct picture of that. It had been corrupted over so many generations. And so they had defiled the house with 300 and something gods of their own making. But this chapter of the Quran, it says, for the protection of the Quraysh, protection in the extremes of winter and summer. Winter and summer. The fall and spring are mild in this picture that I'm giving you. And you know, all societies have seasons. So we have these physical seasons, but societies themselves, the reality of human life in community has seasons. And the extreme of winter can be punishing. The extreme of summer can be punishing. The extreme in the sensitivities of leaders who don't care and are cold to their populations can be punishing.
Yes, sir.
And those that permit all manner of lusts to attack as passions fired up, leaping over your intelligence, are punishing the extremes of winter and summer.
Yes, sir.
For the protection of the society, for the protection of the Quraysh, for the protection of their dignity, for the protection of their pride, for the protection of their hope, let them adore the Lord of this house. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Let them worship the Lord of the house. The house. Bait. The fundamental foundation of human existence. The home. Everybody wants to go home. And they say, we got all kinds of poetry to identify the value and the love of people for their home. Men will lay down their lives for their homes, for what is held dear and sacred in their homes, their wives, their children, their identity, sacred matters, sacred importance, sacred relevance, sacred command, the home. The pastime of these United States of America, the great pastime, the great man who perhaps was the greatest baseball player of all time, Willie Mays. Some of you all don't even know who he is. Can't even appreciate his the beauty
Yes.
and the relevance. And I've read commentary on what he was able to do, what he did, how he did it, in the context of the American pastime. And what's the objective of the American pastime? What is its hope? To go home. Even the plate looked like a house.
Yes, sir.
Come on. Mm-hmm.
You stand there at the house and the world throws its curveballs and its fastballs at your head like Bob Gibson, you throw it at your head. You stand too far into the house, claiming it's yours and only yours, it don't belong to nobody else but you. You better be ready for some chin music, buddy. That's what they called it, chin music.
Yes, sir.
My grandfather was a catcher in the Negro Leagues.
Yes, sir.
Chin music, throw right at your head. That house don't belong to you exclusively.
Come on.
It belongs to all the American people.
Yes, sir.
You're not the only one to benefit from the resources of America. All of what is under its ground and in the sky, from sea to shining sea, you think it belongs to you? Only? Exclusively? No. I'm going to back you off of that. Bait in Arabic is an endearing term. There are other words in the Arabic language and in the Quran that describe home, but bait is the one referring to human life in its original identification, original sensitivities, original purity. The Arabs, before they had the dignity of Islamic teaching, thought that it was appropriate for them to go around the house naked. And we might look at that and say, oh, that was corruption. But in the estimation of the Arabs themselves, they thought of it being a connection to their original life, that human life comes here naked. Original purity, original design. And the chapter goes on, a short chapter of the Quran. It says, let them worship the Lord of the house who provides for them food against hunger and security against fear. I don't know of people that are more concerned or have a higher concern than the safety of their homes. And here in this part of the verse, safety and security is associated with deprivation. That if you are depriving people of that which supports their life, that caused their life to grow and to be nourished properly, then you are threatening your security.
Yes.
Here's the great lesson of what are the constitutional elements of preserving the home life. Fair access to resources. Fair access to education. Not trickery, denial, putting in high offices imposters. The same word in the Arabic language in the Quran that describes the picture that God has created when He created a human person, a similar word with the same root system means trumpet in the Quran. Meaning what? That a time will be called out in the life of society, troubling, oppressive, difficult to embrace or appreciate, darkness, famine, injustice, bold and prolific lies, ineptitude, ill preparedness, all descriptions of the present public American leadership. For the protection of the society, let them worship the Lord of the house. The values of the house that have been established by the ones who constructed it with recognition of the Lord Creator. In the Bible it says that the stone that the builders rejected became the cornerstone of the house of God.
Yes, sir.
What stone was rejected? The stone to acknowledge man's original nature and purity. You want solution for the United States of America and its leadership? Insist that its leaders respect the common human person.
Yes.
Sir. Sir.
Takbir.
Yes. Don't cast your vote except that you feel assured that that person, like our mayor,
Yes, sir.
like the president of the city council,
Yes, sir.
are concerned about the dignity of the common human person. With that kind of intelligent voting,
Yes, sir.
systems will bear witness that the American people have again associated themselves with the original sacred aim. And you will put in office, and all of these offices, because we got many presidents, not just president of the United States, we got presidents of corporations and presidents of universities. In all of these offices, a theme representing a movement in the spirit of the American people to restore itself to that sacred property will be the rule again.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Peace be on you. Assalamu alaikum.